So, one of the projects I've got on the go at the minute is this, which is a small tank. It's not a particularly large one. It's 7 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot, and it's going to be a tropical. It's going to be a tropical community tank once it's been cleaned down. I've had it for a while. Now, I would have done a step-by-step on making the stand, but I did do this last year, so the stand's pretty basic. You imagine many small tables made as one large table. That's the best way of putting it. Stands, it's I believe it was 10 inches high. 1 second. Oh, don't tell me the tape measure's going to run out. Would you believe it? Yep, unfortunately I can't spot any tape measures despite the fact this being the place where all the tape measures live. Right, no, everything but tape measures. Right, so where this is, it's 7 by 2 by 2. Well, it's 7 by 2 by 2 volume. It's 26 inches at the front, because as you can see, this gap here between the top brace and the top of the tank, so between here and here, that works out the height of the tank is 26. If I remember rightly, this is about 23. This gap here, well, sorry, that's about 3 inches, sorry. So it's about 23. But if you look at the back of the tank, front of the tank butts up. Oh, these have got to come off yet. Had a problem getting the outer casing off because someone glued on a nice little wooden decoration, and unfortunately said wooden decoration has been glued on so well that it's actually pulled off little pieces of glass when it was tried to be removed. So I've got to just take this front section off, remove these, because they're a bit of a safety issue at the minute. As handy as they be for hanging stuff on, they need to go. But the front of the tank is flush with the side of the tank. However, if you look at the back, it's actually about 1 inch lower. Now, the reason for that is so that where the back of the tank is, when you put your pipe work in, it'll sit just inside. So your pipe work will come up, over and in. Now, when this tank was done, they've left such a small gap. I mean, I can't get my finger in there at all. You'd be pushed to get a piece of 6mm air tubing down there. But the fact is that the intention was good. The idea is to give you enough room on the back of the tank to hook your pipework over, as well as your leads, any sort of pumps you've got inside, like water movers or your air bubblers. You could actually stick them down the side. If you took a plug off, I suppose you could put your electrics through as well. But the fact is that that notch that runs all the way along the tank, that inch, means that when you put a hood on, you've actually got room to do it. Where a lot of other tanks where they're actually square all the way around, you sometimes have issues with gaps at the back which lots of moisture escapes, and over time destroys the hood or destroys the wall if it's up against the wall in your house. It can be kind of an issue, but this way it gives you plenty of scope. And the original hood for this had like a plastic flap on the back, similar to when you walk into a butcher's cold room, or just a cold storage room in general, you get the big plastic flaps. It had that kind of arrangement on the back of the hood, and the idea was you put your pipework through it and the back of the hood would fold over internally, so it would come over your pipework and actually to here. So all the way down the tank you'd actually have your pipework coming in, everything would be sealed, so your moisture just wouldn't run out the back. Or the only way it could get through is a small gap where your pipework would be, as opposed to the entire length of the tank. So it was quite a nicely constructed hood. However, the hood got, well, basically the hood disintegrated over time, as wood does once it gets damp over time, because it's gonna happen. It's a fish tank. Over time, it's gonna get wet, especially if it's sat at say 26 to 30 degrees constantly, and that's evaporating all day long. Yeah, if you forget to put your between here, up a bit, you've actually got one of the openings. If you forget to put your slides on, so basically your glass covers or perspex covers, or whatever you're using, yeah, that moisture is going to go straight up and it's going to absorb into the wood, and over time it just destroys the wood, and that's what happened to the one we had. So the hood is gone. The stand for this 7x2 is actually just there. That's the edge of it. Now that's going to be used not for the 7x2 obviously, because I built that thing, but that 7x2 is being used for these. Now you can't really see them very well at the minute because everything needs moving out of the way to make this a possibility, but there are 6 8-foot tanks. Now 2 or potentially 3 of those are going to be going on top of that 7x2 tank stand, which should bring the tanks out to roughly here, which leaves me a gap slightly bigger than that mushroom stall, in which to put a sump, which will also be going down the side of the tank, because there's a fair gap between the sides. There's about 18 inch roughly. That's where the sump will be from the 7 foot, with a hole drilled in that back top corner on the right hand side. So this whole tank will be draining into a sump down there, then it's going to be pumped back up over the top, and where all this poly is here, that's where one of the 8-foot tanks is going to sit. And the 8-foot tank is going to be sat where this is. It's got 4 feed outs, which were feed ins originally on the 8-foots. They're going to become feed outs. So the 8-foot's going to slide down the back of here onto a stand, and where the feed outs are, they're going to be set so they're about, I don't know, 1/4 inch above this, so that it'll butt up nice and neat, come across, and each of the feed outs is going to feed directly into the tank. So the 8-foot is effectively going to be a holding tank for the community tank. So the water gets pumped up, goes out that corner, goes down to the sump, gets pumped back up to the 8-foot, which actually that's not a bad approximation with the where the poly is, but gets pumped back up to the 8-foot, which then drops over and straight into here, and that's the cycle completed. Your water's up and it's cycling. Now that 8-foot, it's split into petitions, 2-foot petitions. So petitions have got to come out, and each of the petitions has its own drainage. So all the drainage has got to be taken out and sealed. Once that's done, they'll then be lowered in. That will then be lowered into position, and what was originally the inlets on the back, those 4 inlets, will be taken out and the pipework swapped over to become outlets, so that you can just drop freely into the tank. At that point, that 8-foot, it's an 8-foot by 10 inch by 12 inch run, will then have one nice large catfish in, an upside down cat, which is quite a beast at the moment. It's managed to eat everything, and I do mean everything, in the 3-foot tank we have in the front room. We basically got given the catfish because someone complained it was eating all their fish, and we were like, well, it was one of these things where I have a feeling the person was just going to flush it, and it was like, no, you're not doing that. So yeah, we'll take it off your hands, just throw it in the tank with the rest of the cichlids, you know, not a problem. Well, the 5-bar cichlids don't like it at all. They've gone into hiding, and they're big buggers, but they just don't like that fish at all. So the idea is the 8-foot run, once it's set up, which I'm hoping to get set up very soon, will have that upside down catfish thrown in there, along with those 5 bars, and any other cichlids that are still in that tank, because it was just a rush to save that fish, basically. But in theory, it should have plenty of space in that 8-foot run to basically not be a dick to the other fish. But it's going to be in there on its own if not, and the cichlids will be rehoused somewhere else. But the idea is get them in the back, get it all heated, set up, filtered. Obviously with the pump initially won't be attached, because the idea is get the 8-foot in position, get it set up with water and filtration, heating, plenty of lighting kicking about in here. Get it all set up, get them running and ticking over nicely in the back. And then this needs cleaning, which will probably be a half an hour job. It's literally a case of sponge, potassium permanganate, and just get on with it. Basically give it a good wipe down, good clean down, and then once that's done, sluice it a few times, make sure it's clear, and then start filling it. There is a couple of tanks inside that need emptying into this tank, and the idea is to get this up and running in the next week or 3 in tandem with the 8-foot, so this community tank will have a bio load in it soon. Well, once it's cleaned out and it's been set up, it'll have a bio load in it, and it will actually have it's things like Endler's Corridorus. There is an upside down catfish to go in there, but it is a small one. It doesn't grow very big at all, the species. And numerous shoaling tetras and things. I think there's some cooler loach to throw in there as well. But basically, it's just something. I need to get them out of where they are, basically. The tanks that are in the kitchen are going to get broken down and everything's getting put into here. And then once that's done, and this is running smoothly, I then have to sort out additional stands to put from that side all the way across to this side. 2 more 8-foots. 1 more 8-foot on top. So the other one's going to come up to, say, here in total. And then I will leave a gap of probably up to here. And then the next tank goes up, which will be roughly head height. Oh, the top of the tank will roughly be where the top of that poly is. And as a rough idea, there's the door. Gives you an idea of the top of the poly. It's only about 5 foot, so it's still maintainable. It's not a problem. And then the other 2 tanks are going to go in straight across this 7 foot. So I'll still be able to access here because they'll all be at the same height as the back tank. But the back tank is purely going to be a water holder. So if anything goes off, like there's a power cut or anything, I'm going to put a float device in there so it can still cycle the water around. And I'm going to attempt to put a battery backup for the sump pumps. Only a small one, because it doesn't need to be very big, just to cycle the water in the event of a timeout. So at least there is water cycling, and there'll be some water movement on the surface to help with the aeration if anything goes pear-shaped. Because with this being in a garage, this 7 foot used to be a brackish tank, and it was basically submarine. It was sitting somewhere between 18 and 20 on the scale for salt. And unfortunately, we had a power cut, and we didn't know for like 3 days. Then when we came in, all the corals were dead. My moray was dead. All of the anemones, it was absolutely abysmal. Basically, in the space of 3 days, due to shit electrics, we lost. This 7 foot tank was full of corals and anemones, and you can just imagine how much stuff was in here. Live rock, live sand, loads of crustaceans. It was heartbreaking. But after a couple of years, I've finally got around saying, fuck it, I'm setting it up again. Because I've just got sick of it sat here doing nothing, basically. So basically, yeah, stands got built. The idea is each of these gaps underneath is the right size to slide one of those bottom boxes in. So they're just over 2 foot long, and the stand is 2 foot wide. So there's a little bit of a lip but on the back there will be a gap between the back stand when it goes in for the 8 foot and the tank itself. There'll be probably about 1.5 to 2 inches gap to do over braces for the other tanks that are going to go across the top, because there's also holding tanks that are going to be part of this setup as well, which are going to go on top of the 7 foot on their own little stands. So there's a lot to be added to this over the next couple of months to a year. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight, but it is one of the many things that's work in progress, and it's not one of these things that you do in an afternoon. I mean, the stand took a day or so to do due to my physical issues and, well, power tools being dicks. But yeah, now stuff's all working, it shouldn't be an issue. But manhandling this into position, I got my brother to give me a hand, and let's just say moving a 7x2x2 12mm tank, 12mm glass, is not fun. Especially when it's double based. It weighs a frickin' ton, and if you drop it, you're going to feel it. It's not like you drop a little tank and it's like, oh, I've bruised my foot. This would crush it. It's literally a case of 2 hands and take your goddamn time. Brace yourself. Do not drop it. So with me and him doing this all on our own, we could have done with 2 other people to make it easier. But you know, we're used to manhandling tanks and breaking ourselves in the process. We've not broken one yet. I think the only one I've ever broken moving I did intentionally because I wanted it out of the way to be able to break it. But we've never yet dropped a tank, and we've moved this tank at least 3 times now. And yeah, as a 7x2 it weighs a lot. The mad thing is it weighs about 3 times more than the stand. That stand, although it's bigger and looks heavy, is about 1/3 the weight of this. I don't even know how much this weighs. I just know it weighs a lot. It's the heaviest tank we've moved ever. And that's including the 5.5 one that was moved a couple of months ago back to my brother's. Compared to this, it's just nothing. It's crazy how painful moving a tank around can be. But yeah, all in all, the plan is get this clean, get the stand up for the 8 foot at the back, get the 8 foot on with all the partitions removed, resealed, holes covered, blank plates on, basically get it all set up, banged in the back. Once that's in place, fill it, clean this, fill it, transfer the 3 foot fish into here, into the 8 foot, transfer the sump fish, which are all basically community things like endlers and things like that, endlers, guppies, tetras, they're all going into here. I mean, it's a fairly big bucket of fish. There must be, I don't know, 100 plus easy in that sump, because they just breed like wildfire, because that's just what endlers do. Live bearers constantly dropping, so basically they'll go in here along with all the corries. There's about a dozen, maybe more, different corridors that are going to be thrown in. They're all in 2s and 3s in pair. They're either in pairs or 3s. We've got things like albino thread fins, standard dwarf albinos, dwarf bronze corries, normal bronze corries, so they grow to a good 3-4 inches. They grow quite large for corries. There's other numerous things to grow in here, but that's beside the point. The main project side of it is stand at the back, 8 foot on top. Once the tank's been on here and sorted, dropped, piped in, this cleaned. Once this is cleaned, fill it, sort the water quality out, get everything dechlorinated, get it all set up to potentially receive fish, and then heaters, water aerators, etc. And then once the hole's been drilled in the side, which I'll drill before I clean this or after I've cleaned, it doesn't matter, it'll still need re-cleaning afterwards anyway. But yeah, in that corner, up there, it's not focusing, up there, there'll be a hole put there which will then feed along, well, feed probably down, to be fair, depends how high the tank ends up being, the holding tank, down to there, and then pump back around again. So it's 2 bits of pipe work. Probably use something like an ocean runner. Got a couple of 3.5k ones, 3,500 litre ones. Got a couple of 6,500 litres. I might use a 6.5 and see how brutal the flow is on this tank, on this setup, because it might be way too much. Then again, it might be just right for the upside down catfish and the cichlids. So I'll try it. If it's too vicious, I'll just swap pumps over. I'll not bother limiting it. I'll just swap the pumps. Be easier, instead of having a really heavy pump and then restricting the flow. It seems a bit pointless when you can just swap the pump for a lower flow. Seems mad. And then obviously the filtration is going to be put in as well in the sump, and I may even have the outflow just run through one of the many canister filters that are kicking around here, like the one that's on the 3-foot at the minute. Just retask that, clean it out, retask it, leave half of the media in, so we don't kill all the bacteria that's in there. So it's going to help initially with starting the tank, the setup at least, and get it all cycling. Then once it's all cycling and sorted, this will end up with the substrate. Haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking under gravel with a sand, a matting and a sand bed for part of it. I might do part sand, part slate. But either way, there'll be a base setting done, and then it'll all be pumped out. Obviously, hole in the back, down, and that should help with filtration, planting, and whatever else needs doing. So from there, yeah, a couple of weeks' time. So I'll see how it goes. I'll keep people up to date, because it's just one of the many little things I've got to do. And I apologise for the buzzing in the background. The reason being, the buzzing is this tank. Now that's a little coastal tank, which somewhere in there, there's a big old angry crab, if you can see him. Is he there? He might be there. I can't really make out on the camera. 1 second. Let's have a look. What do we have? Oh yeah, there he is. Good old angry pants. He's in the middle. You might not be able to see him properly because that. Move these out of the way because they're reflecting. There we go. He's in the middle, just standing around chomping. There's beadlets in there. There's little gobies. There's whelks. There's little dog whelks in there running around. There's all sorts. But it's in a reasonable sized tank, and we've had him in there for 16-18 months now. He's happy. He's grown a fair bit. He was about half that size originally, but he's turned into a right chunk, and he's all right. He loves getting fed. It's a meaty tree here and there, and whatever else we throw. Like we do occasionally throw in things like, as you can see, all of the oysters on the bottom. We throw those in, and he kind of has his way with them. Any ones that survive filter the water and do actually seem to be doing quite well, but ever so often he decides he wants one, and job done. They're not really going to stop him. But yeah, this has then got to be reset. This tank, it's just going to end up cleaned out a bit, and he may go into a different tank. But if you can make out, there's another tank behind. It's very, very murky, the outlines of a tank. That's shrimp, little dwarf shrimp, and there's quite a few in there. And then if I just go up, there's a load of other random tanks down there which need sorting. It's literally a case of once this 7-foot's sorted, they all get sorted, because as you can see, those 8-foot tanks are in the goddamn way. So that was the quick update on things that are to be done, things in the move, things in the process. Fingers crossed it made sense to some of you. If not, I apologise. But yeah, like I say, I'm doing other things in addition to writing. So obviously some things take precedence over the writing and recording of that, and unfortunately this is one of them, as I need to get tanks out of the house. So things will still be going up as normal, but I do have to get this done. I will put up more recordings of other things, such as talking through cosplay builds and things like that. In fact, in there is the base build for what was going to be my orc arm. That's in that bag. There's actually a fully printed out, ready to go 3D printed hand, which is all articulated. I mean, my hand is about 9.5 inch span. I think that's about 14. It's quite a large hand. But that was all. Everything in there is the base build for the orc arm I was doing. But that's been put on hold because, you know, Nurgle Marines. More important, Karnefos needs to be built first. But yeah, right, okay. Good day all, and hopefully it wasn't as boring as it sounded. Okay, goodbye all.